So now I'm going to talk about how we went about finding an aged care provider for my parents and also why we ultimately decided to choose the Australian Chinese Community Association as our home care provider. So in this video, I'll talk about how I went about finding a provider. Then I'll talk about, you know, the our current how we chose the Australian Chinese Community Association as our provider, and also our home care agreement, what it looks like, and also finally, why it was good to have my dad do most of the ground and grunt work of this whole process, because it does take some time and it does take some work, and my dad actually did most of this. The primary motivation I had for getting on top of this and understanding the packages is obviously I still have my mother, God forbid that she's still quite well, but if anything does happen to my mom, I'm kind of prepared for it, and I kind of know the process, and it's not that process itself and the unfamiliarity of it all and the foreignness of it all isn't going to throw me completely like it did before. So yeah, okay, so next let's go into it. Okay, so we're going to go through how to find a home care aged provider that will help. So go to the My Aged Care website and then go to find a provider, search for a provider. And here it's quite important, it's quite useful. You've got help at home, short-term care, aged care homes, which is like nursing homes. Help at home is my situation. Then you would type in your postcode. So say, because this is as a CBD, we'll just use this, Sydney, New South Wales. So there's two types, right? There's home support services, and then there's home care packages. Now my dad is at a home care package level 3, and I'm going to click search. And so here we are, home care package level 3. And in cultural services, I typed into, Chinese, and then I put in Mandarin is the language that my dad speaks. So we have Mandarin, and distance up to 20 kilometers, update search, and then go scrolling down. Sort by relevance, A to Z. Okay. Right, so then, yes, so this is the home care package that my dad uses. The aged care provider services has a couple of features. So there's this compare. I think you can compare this to, say, this, for instance. And then you can compare these two. Right, see, this is quite useful. But we didn't really use that feature. We just picked the kind of this one. My dad picked this one because a family friend had recommended him this package, and I think, yeah, so this Australian Chinese, this is a Chinese home care package. The Australian Chinese, so ACCA stands for, what does it stand for? Let me see. I know what it says. It stands for the Australian Chinese Community Association, I believe. Yes, the Australian Chinese Community Association. So it's the Australian Chinese Community, no, the Australian Chinese Community Association is part of a general bigger group, which is under, I think it's under Happy Living, which is another thing I'll do. But see here, so it's quite good. Home care package 3. You've got your, contact details. You've got all the types of care package levels that they attend to. And you've got the cost home care package funding, which is, okay, so level 3 is this much, and per fortnight. I think this per fortnight feature is very useful because you can get the ballpark. So if it's 1305 per, if it's 1305 per fortnight, then you can easily just divide it by 2 and find out the approximate amount you get per week, which is around, the government will round about round approximately subsidize around 653 or 652 approximately. And then there's this part about a basic daily fee paid by you. So this is a government subsidized package, which means that you still have to pay a bit. So per fortnight, you could be paying, $70, right? And divide by 70 divided by 2 is 35. So, 35 per week you would be paying, which is not too bad considering obviously you're going to be using these services a lot. Care management, full manage. So then there are different ways to manage your care package. There's fully managed by the provider, and then there's self-managed by you. So currently we're using the fully managed by provider option, but we are exploring the option self-managed by you. So we'll give you update. I'll give you an update about how that goes. And yeah, so it's very clear. See this government website about how much money per what. And yes, and then you've got the fee estimator to help you calculate it. And I've never used it. And then you've got your pricing schedule, and then you've got your full pricing schedule. So both of them will, if you click on it, they will download. So now if we go to this one first, I've already got this open in another window. It's here. So this is a home care pricing schedule, which is quite useful. Sets out exactly, you can see quite clearly how much you might be paying per fortnight. I think this yearly thing, this is the total amount per year. That's a bit, like it doesn't really make that much sense I think it's a lot better if you look at the fortnightly one, just because when you're managing day to day, you kind of think on a more 2-week basis than a yearly basis, especially if your parents are really sick. And then the note says you may be required to make a contribution to the cost of your care by paying an Australian government income tested care fee and or basic daily fee. So I think this fine print you should be aware of. So depending on how much, what your financial situation is, or what your parents or your grandparents' financial situation is, this number, I'm not sure if it's capped or whatever, but it could be lower. If you're less well off, I guess this number is lower, or it could be more. I'm not sure. Yeah. So then it talks about, price of common services. So an example I would use when I'm using this to make sense is we have currently used the light gardening option for common services. So light gardening, what we had to do is around the house was my dad we wanted to cut down a really dangerous tree, and that could be subsidized. That was counted and classified as a light gardening service. So how the provider delivers services. So they will kind of give you a list of, people who help cut down trees so that you don't have to do that work. And the standard rate per hour is, if to cutting down the trees, $55 per hour. So that's the cost of that service itself, and that $55 essentially comes out of your fund, right? Your home care package. So that's so far what we've used. We've used a couple of smaller items, but as an example, I think that's quite clear. And yeah, so that this is what we're using so far. Yeah, so that's the brief overview of the one we did. And there's also one about, if we go back here, there's a full price guide, which is again, if you click into it's a Google Drive doc, and it's this one. And it just goes into a lot more detail about how you calculate the prices and the fees. And again, if I go back to this, you know, there is the option to self-manage your package. So with care management with your 33K, how it works is the provider will take a percentage of that, say 33K, and the rest is kind of yours because they're providing you services. So uh, they take a, so how they're paid is the money paid for the care managers or the care providers in this case, um, the Australian Chinese home care package, they will get around, I think it's 30, 33 or 30%. I can't remember. But if you self-manage it, if you can self-manage, if you choose a self-management option by yourself, that the actual provider, the Australia Chinese Community Association, pays a lot less. Like they don't get 33%, they get a smaller percentage, like 15% or 13% even. And the outstanding amount kind of is for you to manage yourself. For instance, if you were to cut down trees, you'll be looking for your own uh, provider. You won't be asking the service provider for a list of suppliers who would cut down trees for you. So yeah, that's why we chose this. It's pretty straightforward. Um, that part. I know with a couple of other ones that I've heard people use, but I'm not in huge amounts of know a great deal about, is there is one called Montefiore. I don't know this one. I think this one also provides flexible home care, which is something that is the option that we are looking at. But I guess they also provide nursing home kind of uh, services. And then there is another one, the Scalabrini. I think this is pure residential care, so this is pure, nursing home. Um, and then there's another one I know, which is the Opal. Why choose about Opal Aged Care. I think they're quite big. I've heard them a lot. Um, but again, I don't really know anyone who's put their parents or grandparents in Opal Aged Care. And then there's the other one, Aveo is quite well known. But again, I haven't really, you've got the menu here, living options. You've got independent living, service apartment. So independent living is again the option where I guess you're living at home. So with these ones and the last four, I don't really have direct experience. Okay, so this is the Australian Chinese Community Association home care agreement that my dad has with the aged care provider. And this is, yeah, so it's basically a contract, and I won't show you all the pages, it's just giving you an idea. And then if we go back, this is the table of contents. So as you can see, it's basically like a contract, right? The basic agreement, your rights and responsibilities. If you want to end the agreement, the fees and charges are probably worth looking at. Termination, variation, and there's also my dad had to sign something specially. All these annexures are different. And then he was also given, the last pages where you would sign. But basically, the contract covers all of these terms. So now, just one last thing I wanted to mention was why it was quite useful. Oh, it was good to have my dad, who is quite sick, to get him, because his mind is still very clear, he was able to do all of this himself, including trying to find an aged care provider, locating aged care provider, which is quite a bit of work if you were to actually get hands-on with it. But getting your sick parent or grandparent to do it themselves I think it's actually good for their mental health to do it themselves because it helps divert their attention and gives them something to focus on, uh, instead of thinking about, the negative feelings that come with getting sick. So, yeah, I would suggest that you get whoever the sick parent or the sick grandparent to do this themselves. But obviously, it's good to know how to do all of these things, just in case, anything happens and they aren't able to do it themselves, then you can always step in and help out.